Hi, everybody. This is Mrs. Gladstone reading Finding Zasha, Chapter 19. Get up, get up. The overhead light seared my eyes. I couldn't see the person who hovered over me, but I knew it was Axel. Memories of the previous day lit up my tired brain just as I felt the movement of the puppies against my chest and heard their faint moans of waking. Where are my dogs? He demanded. They're gone. Where are my dogs? I sat up, pulling the blanket back to reveal Thor and Zasha. They're right here, sir. I could see his face now, the anger changing to relief, then to something I couldn't quite read. He bent down and picked up Thor. You will not sleep in the same bed with my dogs again. Do you understand? Yes, sir. I set their beds up for them, but they wanted. I don't want to hear your idiotic excuses. I won't have them sleeping with a Russian. Their job will be to hunt Russians when they're older. I can't have them confused. Zasha was licking my hand. I quickly turned her around and pushed her gently toward her water bowl. Rage sparked in me at the idea of their being trained to hunt my fellow countrymen. But I tried to ignore it. As I said, you're right. I shouldn't have let them sleep with me. Of course I'm right. You are not their master. I am. Get the other dog and follow me. Zasha was a little skittish, and I tried to run under the desk, but soon I had, and she tried to run under the desk, but soon I had her in my arms. I'm thinking of changing their names, Axel informed me, as I ran to catch up with him. Hansel and Gretel sound more German, don't you think? And more amusing. Of course, that's up to you, sir, I said diplomatically, thinking not only what an awful idea it was, but of his terrible temper. Although dogs do learn their names very quickly, changing them now might confuse them. It could slow down their ability to learn. He didn't respond, but I could see his body stiffen. I'll make the decision before the day is over. Do not refer to them by their names until then. Yes, sir. We entered the cafeteria, which was already bustling with preparations for the morning meal. Fritzy, Axel called out to the cook. He held Thor high, smiling proudly. Fritzy looked up and stopped stirring what looked like a huge pot of oatmeal. A smile spread across his face. Soon Fritzy and the other cooks had gathered around Axel. They laughed and talked and reached out to pet Thor, while Zasha sat at Axel's feet. I couldn't understand what they were saying, although the names Thor and Hansel and Zasha and Gretel were repeated several times. Finally, Axel shrugged and placed Thor down. Then he said to me, the consensus is that Thor and Zasha are stronger names. It seemed so obvious. Even I knew that. Thor was the name for the Norse god of thunder. It was the perfect name for the lively, bold puppy, and Zasha was a Russian name, one of the nicknames for Alexandra. I couldn't help but hope that every time Axel uttered her beautiful Russian name, it would taste bitter in his mouth. Fritzy put down bowls of chopped meat and oatmeal in the corner for the puppies. They ate quickly and looked up at Fritzy expectantly when they were done. Oh, no, no more, Axel said, or you'll both be looking like fat Russian peasants. He scooped up Thor. Get Zasha. Follow me. We went back to the storeroom. Get your concertina. We'll leave the dogs in here for now, he said, closing the door to the windowless room without saying goodbye. Are you just going to leave them there alone? Are you questioning me again, Ivan? He strode down the hall toward the stairs. I rushed to follow. No, sir. It's just that I was thinking. I hesitated because, in truth, the idea was still forming in my brain somewhere. Several seconds went by. Apparently, you're not thinking. You're not actually thinking, he said as he reached the stairs. Then it hit me. I knew. I was thinking that I could train the dogs, sir. Back in Leningrad, I was well known for being the best dog trainer in our apartment building. In your entire apartment building? Imagine that, he said sarcastically, jogging up the staircase. It was a lie. I taught Olga's dog, Oscar, a few tricks and watched occasionally as Georgie trained Leonid, the rat. But I knew I could figure it out. As much as I'd like to take advantage of your gift, what I'm sure is your genius, I have made other arrangements for their training. We start this morning. Maybe I could help that person, I said as we reached the first floor. Something in me knew that I had to be with those dogs to protect them. I can't imagine he'll have any need of your help. Now, quiet. 10 minutes later, I watched Axel shave in a large tiled lavatory, standing shirtless in front of one of the mirrors. I played the concertina for him near the door. He said he liked the way the sound reverberated and echoed in the room. I'd never seen a grown man shave, and I watched with interest as he foamed the soap in a cup with a brush, spread it carefully and expertly removed the hair with a straight razor. The thought of learning about shaving from a Nazi filled me with anger, not just for myself, but for all the Russian boys who had lost their fathers at the hands of the army that surrounded me. Many men came in and out to prepare themselves for the day. Every one of them acknowledged through the tone of his voice or the way he moved his body that Axel was the man in charge. When they spotted me, they spoke to Axel, probably asking who I was. I could tell they were pleased with having music. Some even nodded to me in greetings with smiles. When he was done, I followed Axel back to the cafeteria where breakfast was being served. He went directly to the head of the line. There seemed to be an endless pots of food filled with things we hadn't seen in Leningrad in months. I envied and hated our enemy all at the same time. He glanced around the room and pointed to a place near the wall. Go over there, play for everyone while I eat. Fritzy will give you breakfast afterward. Yes, sir. Then I took a deep breath to gather my courage and said, I keep thinking about the dogs. I'd be more than happy to stay with them during their first training session. It would be no problem. He closed his eyes as if his anger was building. Not only do I want you with us, you will leave this building when you have finished playing. You will not return until noon when their training session is over. Do you understand me? I opened my mouth to speak, but knew if I uttered another word about the dogs, there would be trouble. I nodded. I positioned myself where Axel had told me to stand and began to play My Sunflower, the song Alik and Misha and I had been working on the day of the first heavy bombing. It helped me put the dogs out of my mind temporarily and focus on the necessity of memorizing everything around me so I could tell Petra the number of men, what their uniforms looked like. There was hardly a wounded man in the room. Most looked healthy and confident. They chatted happily and laughed often. Doesn't one of you have a pang of guilt about invading our country, I wondered. Do you know about the siege of Leningrad, of what your fellow soldiers are doing right now to us as you feed your faces and look so satisfied? Ivan, it was Axel. Softer. I nodded, only then realizing my anger and tension had been expressed in my playing. 40 minutes later, when the room was almost empty and Alex had dismissed me, I packed up my concertina and asked Fritzy if I could have something to eat. He fed me well and asked about the dogs. I told him that Axel was going to start their training that morning. Good, Fritzy exclaimed. Good dogs for guarding. Everything they find. He smiled at me like we should both be happy for their glorious futures. It was the guarding and finding I worried about. I felt certain that to make the dogs capable of such things, they would have to be exposed to cruelty themselves. You don't create a vicious guard dog, one taught to hunt human beings, by gentle coaxing. You create it through fear and brutality. My distress must have been written all over my face. Fritzy said, You sick, Ivan? No, I'm fine, just thinking. Thank you, Fritzy, I said, holding up the rolls he'd wrapped in butcher paper for me to take with me. Once I was out of sight of the soldiers guarding headquarters, I ran all the way to Galina's. Auntie and Galina were out near the chicken coop searching for eggs. They both gasped when they saw me. Ivan, Auntie whispered, come in the house. We hurried in the kitchen where I'd barely set my things down before the two of them began hugging me and fussing over me. They both had tears in their eyes. Auntie shook her head as she gazed at me. After you left, I worried I'd never see you again. How could I have ever explained it to your mother? She closed her eyes. Sit down, I'll get you breakfast, Galina added. I've already eaten. I held up the parcel of food. And look, soft rolls. How do you know they're not poisoned? Galina asked, frowning. I don't, but Axel told me to be back by noon, so I don't think they'll kill me just yet. He seems to be in charge of everything here. What happened since I left yesterday? We went to see Petra early this morning to tell him they'd taken you. What did he say? He said if they let you go, or if we found out anything about you, go see him immediately. All right. But what happened here in town? Did any of the Germans come to tell us what we can do and what we can't do? No. Galina has heard they sometimes go through the neighborhood with a loudspeaker telling everyone to report to their headquarters. Other times they come to the door. They look at everything you have and take what they want. Galina shrugged, her eyes wide. It's only what I've heard. I don't really know. We should be prepared for everything. I'm going to see Petra now. He'll figure out something important for me to do while I'm there, I said, pushing myself away from the table. I have to be back there in just a few hours and I can't be late. I ran out the back, never having taken off my coat, and barely saying goodbye. Wow. Okay, I'm going to keep reading chapter 20. On my long walk to Petra's, I kept a keen eye out for movement of any kind or signs that someone might be watching me. I saw only blue sky and the quiet blanket of snow that covered everything. I passed near the crest of the hill that Polina and I sledded down. I wanted so badly to slide or roll down or to play in the snow, but thought to myself, no, you're a partisan now. Partisans don't make snow angels on their way to meet the group leaders. It filled me with a sense of purpose and determination. I knocked once on Petra's door, just as Polina had done yesterday morning. There was no answer. Stepping back to see if smoke was coming from the chimney, I saw there was none. I looked around, uncertain what to do. When I saw one of the curtains that covered the front windows move slightly, the door creaked open, although I couldn't see anyone behind it. I slipped quickly into the cottage. Wrong knock! It was Petra's voice, like the last time I was there. My eyes had to adjust to the dim light before I could make out his face. One knock is for a meeting. One knock. Count to 3. Then 2 knocks means I have to talk to you. I'll get Polina to teach me and the others. Good. What do you have to tell me? He lit a long pipe and sat down in a rough wooden chair near him. I began my story about how Zasha had come to Galina's door, of Axel and his bodyguards, of Thor, of playing music for them, and of Axel's decision to take me to headquarters. I poured out as many details as I could remember about the guns, other weapons, and soldiers I'd seen. I even told him about sleeping with the dogs and about the soldier outside the building who stopped me from walking them. You're brave, he said simply. It was an unexpected compliment from a man I guess didn't give them out often. Thank you. Once you're in their territory, your options are limited. What do you mean? A little ripple of anxiety shivered through me. He shrugged. If they go to your house, catch you on the road, you can run, or at least try. If you're in their camp, well, you're their prisoner, even if they haven't put handcuffs on yet. I'll remember that. What did you learn of Major Reicht? Petra had an intense way of looking at you, like he knew your words before you spoke them. He seems to be in charge of everything. He speaks perfect Russian. His guards don't speak any. He seems very smart and what? Cruel. It was nothing he did exactly. I just saw it in him. He tries to hide it, though. What does a 12-year-old boy know about such things? I saw it. It passes over his face in an instant, even less. Petra nodded slightly as he lit his pipe again. Axel Werner Siegfried was, until recently, a lieutenant colonel in the German army. He was demoted. That means he went down a level when his superior officer found out Axel was spending a great deal of time with the officer's wife. Whoa. So you know of him, but why would they send a colonel to Little Villeneuve? It's not like we're in Moscow or Leningrad. I think that's the point exactly. He's being punished. Oh, how did you know all this? Information is power. Any bit of news or even rumor a partisan hears, he passes along. You'd be amazed at what we know. Like what? Like what I just told you about the right. We know other things. For instance, he likes whips. In fact, he's an expert with a whip. Something deep inside of me was so repelled by the thought that my stomach contracted as if I had just seen a snake. Using a whip was different from using a gun. It seemed to me you had to enjoy inflicting pain to use a whip. I didn't see one, I said, my mouth feeling dry. How do you know? How do you defend yourself against someone with a whip? I don't think you do. And they say that pain is... Petra must have realized how his words were affecting me because he changed the subject. But why has he let you go? He hasn't. I'm supposed to be back at noon. I don't know what will happen after that. He even gave me a letter, I said with a little laugh, so that if another one of his men stops me or wants to shoot me, they know I have his permission to be there. Peter stood up very straight and leaned toward me. Do you have the letter with you? I nodded, unbuttoned the upper left pocket of my coat where I'd put it for safekeeping, and handed him the folded letter. He took it over to the window where, although the curtains were drawn, there was a little more light. Oh my God, he muttered and looked up at me, his eyes burning with excitement. Do you know what this means? Yes, that I can go there again, and it means we have an official Wehrmacht letter and a copy of the seal and signature of a high-ranking officer. Let me see. I peered over his arm as he read it a second time. I haven't even looked at it when Axel gave it to me. His handwriting was even and precise. The letterhead had the insignia of the double eagle. Beneath it, in an almost medieval-looking print, were several lines of German I couldn't read except for an address in Berlin. What does it say, Petra? He shook his head. My German is poor, but it doesn't matter. What does matter is that we can get Yeshka to copy it. The boy I met at the meeting? Yes, the printer's son. You see this seal? I nodded. It's carved from hard rubber. Yeshka and his father are so good, they can make a copy of Axel Wright's personal seal. He could barely contain his excitement and kind of shook his head as if he'd just come in from a snowstorm. He must have seen my confusion. You don't understand, do you? I shook my head. He held up the letter. With this letterhead, seal, and signature, The partisans can create other letters full of bad information, wrong directions, impossible orders, anything you can imagine. Oh, I was starting to get the idea. The partisans have lots of uniforms. They've taken off dead German soldiers with a uniform, official-looking letterhead, and a seal. He stopped, a smile spreading across his craggy face. We can cause the Germans a lot of trouble. I felt so proud, so grateful that I'd be able to provide something useful to the partisans. When did you say you have to be back there? Noon. He folded the letter, slipped it into his shirt pocket. We're going to see Yeshka and his father now. There's no time to lose. Oh, all right. Well, I'm going to post this chapter and then I'll keep reading chapters 21 and 22. This is getting too exciting and a little bit suspenseful. Hope everything turns out okay. Bye for now.